bar.
That extra gear, the first 3 steps.
Huge strides in the performance.
That I might not be the player I am today.
All right, welcome to another episode of Behind the Gear, and today we are sitting with Mitch Stewart with Total Package Speed, Strength, and Conditioning.
Back on it.
But the reason I wanted to bring you on today, Mitch, is first of all, Happy New Year, and I hope we'll talk a little bit about your holidays because you had a pretty cool
trip. Yeah.
Yeah. But also I want to talk a little bit just about hockey and obviously some of the guys that you train and how they're doing this year and some of the kind of, we peel back the layers a little bit and seeing how they're having success, or it's not really a surprise. I had the question asked me the other day with Travis Connect Me with Philadelphia, and someone said, hey, did you think that he would be as good as he is? And, not to sound like, oh yeah, for sure. I knew for sure. Yeah. But, I think you and I chatted about this before, but I had a pretty good idea that he was going to play in the NHL. I thought he'd get a good shot of playing in the NHL. And I thought if he was used, in a top 6 role, like meaning playing with like some of the top end guys, I think he could play. Yeah. And he has that tenaciousness and that fight and stuff in him that, I think he was going to have. Probably not the success he's had, but yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, man, it's not surprising, I guess.
It's really funny because he was in the first couple of years that I started doing this stuff.
Yeah.
No, like with athletes. So I was training prior to that, but then started working with athletes, and he was in the first, couple of years. And it's funny because looking back, I don't think I realized it almost like tainted my perspective on how hard kids work and stuff like that, because right from it's so competitive. And there was that group of kind of Mitch Law and Travis. They were always so competitive with each other and always up in the bar on each other. And the things that they were doing at that age, and to be honest, even how quickly learn stuff and everything, it was not typical, really. Right. And so looking back, it's no surprise as where he is now, but at that time, I don't think I'd be like, oh yeah, I know this kid is going somewhere, Now I just over and over again, I look at how many people have gone through here and how close they've gotten, say, to playing in the NHL or playing pro hockey or whatever. And just how hard it is to get there blows every year. I'm like, it's incredible. Like, just how challenging it is. I've never, now it's, you can't, there's no guarantees, like ever.
There's one thing to think about: working hard, putting the time, putting in the effort. That's all great. And that's all part of it. Right. And having the skill and all that stuff, but it's also being put in a good situation where you're going to get an opportunity, because we've got a lot of guys that have gone through and are still grinding it out in the minors, and
they work hard and but
they do a lot of the right things. They're just not getting that opportunity. Maybe it's a tough organization. Maybe they're deep. Maybe they have a lot of good players. So you're bumped out of the lineup a little bit, or you're bumped the depth chart. And so I think, there's so many other things that come into play on a player making it or having success. At the end of the day, I think hard work is going to overcome. And, if you grind it out long enough, you'll get your opportunities, hopefully. Yeah. Right. But there's so many outlying things.
And there are some intangibles too, right? That you just, that you can't address. And I think that Trav and some of those other guys do have some of those things. And I think they develop a little bit naturally based on your environment and that kind of thing. But it's not necessarily because, a coach said something or what, I don't know, but there's just a lot of things with, that when I look back on how some of the players that are playing in the NHL now, how they acted growing up and how they kind of carried themselves, that there's certainly some guidance to do those things, but at the same time, it's largely they develop that themselves.
Yeah, for sure. Now, do you think there's something to be said about having a group? Like I know we had, back with that group there was a good group of 3-4 guys that were real tight and worked hard. They were all athletic. They pushed each other. They all loved hockey. Some liked hockey more than others. And as we see now, some have kind of fallen off a little bit. But at that time, those 4 or 5 guys, were kind of pushing each other and not always together, but they were definitely a big part of each other's surrounding. Right. So,
and I think that's so,
and I think for like a parent, let's say at young ages is, trying to not help, but I think your kids are going to pick the friends that they pick, right? Mm-hmm. But a lot of times those friends become friends because maybe mom and dad know the parents and they hang out with the parents and then they get to know the kid. But even, if you got any small influence as a parent, not that you want to handpick your kids' friends, but it is important that your kid has, and whether that's academically, athletically, emotionally, but friends that are going to challenge them, they're going to push them, they're going to, bring out good things rather than bad things, right?
Your friends can say things to you that you'll take in a certain way that other people may not be able to say to you.
For sure.
And I'm sure those guys had conversations and chirp each other in ways that I couldn't maybe say those things or whoever, but they were a really good group, and there has been the same thing since. And that's partially even the way that we've developed how we try to to run things in the gym is partially from what we've learned and what we've seen in terms of how to create like a cohesive group and like a motivating environment. It's not just about the programming and and how much weight they're lifting or whatever, but also the environment that we're trying to create, because I think there's a lot to be said for the people that you're surrounding yourself with.
Oh, I totally, yeah. And I think that goes on like as you get older.
Yeah.
Right. Like at our age, having good friends and having good people around you that, that are going to challenge you a little bit, and they're going to have, hopefully intellectual conversations and things that'll be, kind of push you or make you think a little bit differently, or kind of get outside the box a little bit,
Yeah.
So Christmas holidays, how are they now? No kids, you and your wife just said, you know what, we're heading out, and
it was great. And we went to London, like UK, we went to Amsterdam, we went to Paris, and we planned it all out. And then prior to the trip, I was kind of like, man, like, do we make it a little bit too tight? Cause basically the way it worked is we were 3 days in each.
Yeah.
But we were in the city the whole time. So it actually worked out really nicely that by the third day we were like, okay, that's enough of this city. Yeah. On to the next one. And we saw lots of cool stuff. I had been to London and Paris before, so I kind of knew what to expect. And my wife had never been to Paris, and she speaks some French and kind of likes the art and all that kind of stuff. So it was a really cool city to visit. But the culture was way different in Paris than it is here, which was kind of neat. And then Amsterdam was probably my favorite, just because I had never been there before. And we also in Amsterdam took a train like an hour or so outside of the city to a smaller town, which was really cool. Yeah. And I think next time that's what I'd like to do a little bit more of. If we go to Europe, towns, like more, like there's a little bit more, it's a little more kind of unique stuff to see. Yeah. At the end of the day, a big city is kind of a big city, and you've seen pictures of all the stuff that is in that's in that city. Yeah. But I mean, it was great. Yeah.
Well, if there was one spot though that you could have stayed for rather than the 3 days, like for a week or a little bit longer, is there any one spot that you stopped? You'd be like, oh, I'd like to stay a little bit longer and explore a bit more.
Mostly Amsterdam, probably just because that was the first time I was there. So the stuff that I didn't get to see, say in London this time, I was able to do last time, and same kind of in Paris. But the biggest thing would be spending more time, maybe even to take a day trip outside of. Like away from the cities a little bit, right? Yeah. And kind of see some of their culture, like kind of rural, right? Like some stuff away, Yeah. Because all the touristy stuff's there, it's great, but it's, you kind of can see it on the internet or see it in books or whatever, right? And then good. How was the travel? Like, did you guys just train past it and just trained everywhere that you guys were going? We, obviously, so we flew there, and then we took a train from London to Amsterdam, which was pretty cool. It was quick. It was easy. Yeah. And then we flew from Amsterdam to Paris, and then we actually had to fly back from Paris to London, just the way that we booked our flights in and out of Europe, which was fine. Yeah. So there was a lot of flights in a short period of time.
A lot of travel.
Yeah.
And long enough or not long enough? Like, would you rather?
Funny. We were both, by the end of it, we were like, and I don't know if it was because we were in big cities the whole time, but the last day we're like, all right, let's get going cranky. Home. Yeah. Yeah. I've been ready to go. Yeah. Yeah.
And you being a guy who obviously, is fit and is, fitness is a big part of your life. Did you guys kind of take that 10, 12 days off, or did you?
Didn't do anything. Like we were walking a ton. Yeah. But, no, nothing. I actually tried to go down to the gym on Christmas Day because there's nothing going on, and it was closed, and the place we were staying it appeared that they had a gym, but I went down to go, and the card that I had wouldn't let me in. So I went back upstairs, and we ordered some pizza and watched some Netflix.
So you were going one way, you completely went
the opposite direction on that one. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, it was good. It was refreshing.
And what was it like? Is like kind of spending Christmas away from home? Was that weird for you?
Yeah, that was kind of the challenging bit, is being away on Christmas Day, and even being away on New Year's Eve. Like New Year's Eve was cool. What we did, like we went to the Arc de Triomphe, and there was some cool fireworks and whatever. But at the same time, it was like a really controlled environment, police everywhere. There were on the news the next day, they're saying there were 400,000 people on that street during.
No way.
Yeah, it was insane, the number of people there. So
wow, that's crazy.
It was a cool experience, but like it wasn't the most fun New Year's. Like usually we go to friends have like a loft kind of area, and they do a different theme party. So this year was it was something to do with like a Vegas type thing, and it looked like it was a ton of fun. So anyways, that's those 2 days are kind of, I'd almost rather be at home, but it was fine. It was good.
Oh, it's cool. Yeah. Very good. All right. So enough of the, enough of the fun talk. No, but basically like one of the things, I got this question a couple times just in the last kind of month, but from parents basically asking, And more so older parents or older players. So players that are like 13, 14, 15 and up. But asking like, hey, when should we start looking at off-season programming? And you've probably received some emails already like, hey, I'm coming back this summer.
Yeah.
And people already starting to look ahead. So just for parents out there that maybe, aren't sure or don't want to get caught off guard and where programs fill up or maybe the strength coach is booked up because they've got enough clients or enough people, enough players there. But when should players and parents start looking or start kind of seeking out or start putting more thought into their off-season training?
So if there's a lot of interest at say 13, I think it's there's a lot we can do, but also at that age, it's a little bit foggy. It's like, I don't think it's 100% necessary that they're doing a ton. It doesn't need to be like for sure, like a 4 or 5 day a week program, but maybe getting introduced to the concept, getting into a training center and kind of seeing how things work and learning how to move a little bit differently that will eventually evolve into, training for hockey. At 14, I think it's a good idea to start taking it a little bit more seriously and somewhere between that, maybe 3 to 5 days a week. Again, it depends for sure on the level of interest of the athlete. But at that age, I do think it's a little bit more important to start getting into it. And then at 15 plus, I think it's pretty important if you're looking to kind of take things to the next level to start training, a little bit more regularly, a little bit more intensely, that kind of thing throughout the off season.
Like for that 13-year-old, like once, twice a week, depending on the time in the summer. And you're going to be doing other activities, like whether it's soccer, or playing or with your buddies or whatever.
Exactly.
At 14 and let's say 15, what would you recommend there? Like 2-3 times a week, getting into like even mobility stuff and strength a little bit and different things like that.
Lot of
Does
like
that sound right?
Motor pattern type stuff, just like learning different types of movements, which would include, mobility.
Yeah.
But also working with like some like lower resistance type things with whether it's like with kettlebell, like light kettlebells and, training barbells and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's a good idea. And working on, again, I've talked about this before, like different speed patterns and all that kind of stuff is really important, but just getting introduced to the concept of training and not working out. There's also a really big difference between those two things. Like your workout is the day, what you do that day, and training is how you're building it. So at those ages, it's building patterns largely. So starting with simple patterns and then slowly making those patterns more complex or loading those patterns or increasing the speed of those patterns. But hopefully, structuring their training in a way that they can see, okay, I started with this and that's evolved to this and that's evolved to this. Cause that's really the way your training as an athlete should kind of work throughout the entire process of training for your sport, is that you're always evolving into something a little bit more advanced than what you were 6 months or a year or 2 years ago. And if you're just working out, so basically just kind of doing things, there will be some adaptations to that and definitely some benefits, but it's not really an elite mindset, I don't think, to have that just go to the gym, break a sweat. And it's great for general fitness and that type of thing, but not necessarily for elite athletics.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense for sure.
And I think getting that concept at a younger age, like 13, 14 is really important. Because what I see with team training all the time is like, they've done these big group circuits and there's no real progression to those circuits. There's no real reason other than to sweat. And then when they get to say 15, 16, where it's going to become a little bit more important to train and actually create, good movement patterns and build on something, they don't really even understand that concept.
Yeah.
Which
is important. Like,
I think it's really important. It's the same for learning skills on the ice and stuff like that. Start with simpler things and evolve.
No, and this is happening more and more now, I think, as we get into, these players starting to train younger. But let's say you have a player that comes to you at 15 and he's been training for a couple of years now already and doing light weights and things like that. Obviously, they're going to be on a little bit different pattern or a little bit different trajectory than someone that's just new coming to the gym at 14, 15 and everything's kind of foreign to them, right? So at what age, I guess, for you, and I guess this is probably a 2-part question, but is this more athlete dependent? So on their body type and their experience and things like that. But what age would you start a player kind of doing weight training and started getting into not heavy weights, but just getting into more like lifting loads and things like that?
I'll start with the like 14, 15-year-old that's been doing training for a while. And in some cases it's fine, but in other cases it's kind of scary to see how their posture's developed based on what they've been doing.
If they've been doing it wrong or not getting the right instruction.
And unfortunately, it can be a lot of like regressing movement patterns because let's say they started just deadlifting with weights before they developed any underlying foundation to be able to do that well. then all of a sudden now they've got really tight lats because their core was not strong enough to handle the weights that they were doing. So lats are a very common muscle. They're important for deadlifting, but they'll take over completely in a lot of cases for an exercise like that. And then you start to create really stiff shoulders, really stiff kind of rotation patterns and all that kind of thing. So you have to kind of backtrack a little bit to try to restore some motion in those athletes. Right. So that can be kind of challenging actually. Whereas if someone comes to you at 14, 15 and they've never done anything, they're probably kind of like, you know, just loose and whatever, and can kind of move in many different ways. And it's a blank slate to work with. It's sometimes you can see a lot more progress pretty quickly actually.
So we're learning the proper techniques right off the beginning, right off the bat, right?
Whereas, and that's the thing. When you're 12, 13, 14, a lot of these kids go in there, they just want to try to do stuff like kind of heavy, like they're in the basement with their buddy's house and they're all trying to do as much as they can. And the compensations that happen at a muscular level when you're doing that are they can be pretty dramatic.
Well, yeah, I mean, they can change, like you said, like posture, a bunch of different stuff that is not good, obviously, to have that compromise at a young age, you know? Now, as a parent, like how does a parent recognize when maybe they're bringing their young 14-year-old boy or girl to a trainer and the trainer doesn't really know what they're doing and they're not doing a good job with it, but the kid comes home every day sweating, he's sore the next day. The parents think that's great. You know, he's getting a little bit stronger. He's starting to develop muscles. Like how does a parent, or what is a good technique or a way that a parent can gauge that a little bit, or, you know, kind of, are there any signs that a parent can pick up on?
How is the kid measuring their success and how long have they been training? So like if they're just kind of starting out and they're measuring their success in their training sessions, one, are they measuring their success at all? So is there any measurement as to how they're getting better or what they're working on? Or are they measuring their success strictly through like say a performance number? So like the weight on the bar or that would be the main one, I guess. And even like how fast the sprints are, it's fine to test that stuff. But if the main measurement is really performance based at say in the first 3 months of training ever, I don't think that's a great thing. It's okay to do some baseline testing with sprints and how many push-ups can you do properly and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, okay, so I started deadlifting, 100 pounds or something, and now I'm doing 150 and I've just started training. There's no way that you've developed, especially like as a 13, 14-year-old kid, like developed in a way, I don't think, to start pushing those numbers like that at that age. So what is the measurement of how you're kind of progressing? And for us, it's movement patterns. Like we may even be doing say a deadlift pattern at that age, but there's several things we do before that, and they understand, how they've evolved to be able to do that. And even once they get there so what we would do is like, let's say they get to be able to do a trap bar deadlift properly. We're not going to push the intensity on that like crazy. We're going to probably just try to learn a new pattern.
Right.
Instead of now taking that and turning it into something really, really heavy.
Yeah.
But then I get 15 and once they've been training, maybe they've been training for a year. Like maybe they started when they were 13. They learned a lot of really good patterns. They're 14 to 15. We're not trying to turn them into a powerlifter. We might start handling a little bit more intensity, a little bit more weight if they've learned a whole lot of different kind of movement patterns.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the biggest thing would be if right off the bat you're measuring how heavy things are or anything like that. I think it's a little bit of a red flag.
Okay, I was going to say, because that was kind of my question. What are some of the red flags?
Yeah.
Right? Like it would be, wow, mom, I did 150 pounds on the bench press today. Like, whoa, you're 14, you just started lifting. That's like, that seems a little bit, so for parents out there, just things to look out for. Hey, I'm lifting crazy amounts of weight at the gym. Not crazy, but for that age, crazy.
Yeah, I kind of think so. Yeah. And there's different schools of thought there, but I mean, again, now having worked with so many athletes and you know what, maybe 8 years ago or whatever, when it was starting out, I probably loaded.
But it was way different then than it is now.
I think so.
What
yeah.
We know
and what we know. Yeah. Yeah.
So
it's, there's a lot to consider when it comes to developing an athlete and how much weight they're lifting, especially in the beginning, is not a huge piece of it.
Right. Yeah. No, I think it's good. So sometimes too, like if your kid gets in the car and is like, man, that was really boring. All we did is worked on these different patterns. And I only got to lift the dowel bar. Parents should be like, okay, that's good.
Yeah.
He's learning how to move properly, or she's learning how to move properly.
And we try to make it as fun as possible. I think biased, but we do a pretty good job. That was we still try to we make them sweat throughout a session where they're like learning fundamentals. But there's some assault bikes in there. There's some little speed circuits within it. There's some. So what we're also doing with that is like we'll teach them like a squat pattern, but instead of loading that squat pattern once it's good, we'll have them do some sort of say circuit where they're getting a little bit more fatigued, and then can they still do those patterns properly when they're under a little bit of fatigue? Yeah. So like that's another way to progress an athlete when they're younger. Is not necessarily more resistance, but challenge their body to hold good positions when they're a little bit tired. So as they start to get good positions, then we can start to challenge them by making them a little bit tired. So then they're not looking at it as like, all I go and do is put a dowel on my back. Like we try to limit that to the first couple sessions, and then we can start making it. Yeah. So they're sweating and they're breathing a little bit heavier, and they're still, but they are still learning those fundamental kind of movements.
Which I mean, I think is huge for obviously like overall development, but just even like posture in their body and like mechanically not doing things incorrectly and making sure they're not getting injured. Right at the end of the day, if they are adding even a light weight to a terribly performed squat, could cause injuries. You can cause a lot of different things that'll go wrong. Right. So I mean, keeping that stuff in check and making sure that, they're on top of, and I think the other thing too is educating the athlete. We always talk about this, but educating the parents and the athlete on why you're doing this, when you're doing it, what's the reason we're taking it slow? Why do you have to get down to this, this angle on your squat or whatever that is, right? I think it's important to educate parents and players on that for sure.
Yeah. And our goal, and we talk about this quite a bit downstairs, is just like, is really to educate athletes to a point where like if they're doing, so we have different levels of exercise complexities and stuff. And if they're doing like level 3 type exercises, they should also be able to, we should be able to hand them a program, and they should be able to do it with, they shouldn't really need to ask too many questions. Right. Like once they're doing level 3 exercises, they should also have kind of a level 3 mindset and ability in the gym in terms of how they operate and how they navigate the gym and all that kind of stuff too. So we want to try to make athletes as independent as possible.
Yeah. Which I think is huge for like not only their athletic career, but just for life. Right.
Yeah.
So basically 13, 14, 15 started kind of a good time to start looking into that off season.
Looking into it for sure.
Training, things like that. And then if you were to recommend someone go to a gym, a Good Life, a small studio, whatever it is, regardless of what it is, because you can go a ton of different ways. Is there anything that you would recommend that, as let's say you're bringing your son in who's 13, he's a hockey player, and you're going to bring him into a gym? Are there things that you're looking for at that gym that are going to help you make the decision to send your son there or sign up for a summer program or get that trainer or that, strength coach to be their kind of coach for the summer type thing? Is there anything that kind of pops out that you'd be looking for as a professional, obviously? And
well, to some degree it would be a track record. I would think is a pretty big piece. Yeah. And then also just getting an idea of what the culture and environment is like. What are they pushing? Like what's the message that's coming from this gym? Is it, grind hard and all the time and beat yourself up and puke at your workouts and, and that stuff may happen also at a good gym. But if that's like the main message, again, it might not be, it's a red flag. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the end of the line, sure. But that's one thing I'd be looking at is the culture. I think overall, just who goes there, what do they have to say about it? What kind of progress have you seen from people that have gone there, all that kind of stuff. And then meeting the people and, who's going to be working with your kids and how do they operate and how do they communicate and all that kind of stuff.
But I think reputation's huge. Right. And asking in the community and stuff like that. And
it's the biggest.
I think, so for any parent out there looking for a gym to go to, I think don't just ask one person. I would ask around a little bit and find a little bit more information on what this gym's about or what this strength coach is about or what's, going on there.
And that's kind of the thing too. There's several great gyms in London, but I think something that is important to recognize is that every gym has a different specialty, or it should. Yeah. Like it shouldn't be a jack of all trades type of atmosphere, especially for an athlete, I don't think. And there's some great gyms that really push fat loss, and there's some great gyms that really push, different types of things, or just general population or whatever it is. But kind of understanding what is it that training center or gym is really focused on helping people with.
Right.
So because I'll hear a lot of kids say, I went to go to the gym with my mom to do these circuits and that kind of stuff, which is fine. But if you're going to start taking things seriously, I think it's important to get in an environment where there's other people like you that are kind of going after similar goals, or and coaches that have helped other people maybe achieve those goals.
Yeah, I think that's massive. And I think even if you have multiple sports or multiple different athletes, male, female, soccer, hockey, whatever it is, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I think just having like those motivated people around each other,
Right.
and that kind of, like you said, that culture that, you know, everyone's pushing to be the best at what they are and keep, you know, pushing more weight or getting faster in their sprints or whatever it is, right? I think that's important. And I think you said something earlier with like culture. I think that's huge. I think going to a gym, and that's, I think, one of the reasons why you see CrossFit doing so well, and these Orange Theories and all these other gyms that are popping up that are kind of specialty gyms for that circuit training. But it's a culture. You go in there, you're part of the group, you're part of the clan, you're part of the, you know, it's fun. Everyone's having a good time, and you know, it's cool, right? So you're in that part of that whole family piece, and it's motivating too. There's nothing better than going to the gym when you're going to meet somebody there, rather than trying to do it on your own.
Yeah,
and
totally.
I'm going to shut her down after 10 minutes because I'm tired,
and hopefully meet someone there that you're going after similar goals, or it's someone that inspires you, or it's someone like something that, so that like you're going to push each other a little bit. And that's kind of like what we were talking about earlier, where I think we saw a lot of that with say Travlaw, Mitch, that whole group, like they and since then as well, there's been groups like that obviously, but you know, they push each other. And if you're going to a place where you push each other, coming back to CrossFit, I think that's largely what happens there. Like, you know, everyone in there is pushing each other to do whatever it is that they're doing that day.
For sure.
But if I go in that environment, I may not feel the same way either. So it's important that you're choosing an environment that you resonate with.
Yeah. And I think that's comfortable. Like, it doesn't have to be, it can be a bit uncomfortable at first, but if you're super intimidated every time you go to the gym, it's going to be hard, man.
Yeah.
You know, you want to play a place that you're kind of, that you're going to be attracted to, or that's going to be accepting for who you are, what you want, for sure. I don't want to keep you long today, but that was one of the biggest things I wanted to chat a little bit about, was just about that whole off season, and when should players start looking into that? Because I think it's a really, really important piece of any player. You know, we'll talk about hockey here, but any player, you know, when can you make the most amount of gains, whether that's shooting a puck, stick handling, working on your skills, your skating, your quick starts, your strength. The summer, like you get 2, 3, 4, 5 months sometimes of prime time, you know, no other distractions for the most part as far as sport. And if you want to really focus on, you know, making these gains, I think the off season is a big, big piece, but you know, getting the most out of it. I think you've given some obviously some really, really good advice on that, which is exactly what I wanted today. But
one other thing too, that we touch on real quick, is just the in-season training. And just how important it is to train in the off season if you expect to train in season, because the main difference between off season and in season training is changing volume. So you're changing the amount of work that you're doing. But if you're not doing any work in the off season, then you don't have the capacity to really handle anything in season.
Right.
So for younger kids and stuff, it's okay because you're learning patterns and all that kind of stuff, and it's not overly taxing. But if you're, say, 15 years old and you expect that you want to start to maybe make your way towards junior hockey and that kind of thing, and you're not doing any training in the off season, and then we'll get some of those kids coming in season, they want to start training, and we can start working on some patterns and that kind of thing. But we can't really train that hard because you're in season and you have no capacity to train because you've never trained in the off season, which is where you build your capacity to train. Yeah. So I just think it's important to recognize, because we do get quite a few kids that want to train in season, and then the off season comes, and then they no longer feel that they need to train. But it's really important to build your capacity in the off season. I'm not saying you got to come in 5 days a week. I'm not saying that at all. And I'm not saying that you don't play other sports. I actually think you should play other sports, but only training in season is a bad idea, or thinking that just training in the season is a bad idea.
I couldn't agree more. And I think also too, a lot of times when players make a lot of gains in the off season and they had a really good off season and they worked hard, and then during the season they just play hockey. That's it. Yeah. You know, and again, in the in season, your volume is going to go down on how much you train as far as the off ice stuff. But man, just getting in once or twice a week, or just doing some stuff at home, it doesn't have to be a lot, but just maintaining what you've done in the summer. Yeah.
Like with our HPTA program, we recommend players in season come once or twice. And sometimes it can look like it's an insignificant amount, but especially if you've been training the off season, it is not, absolutely not. Like, you can stimulate yourself enough to maintain that stuff, and maybe, depending on your training age, even continue to improve. The greater your training age, the more likely it is that it's just maintenance. But when you're a newer athlete to training, it doesn't take a lot of volume to improve, and it won't actually be that taxing because a lot of the adaptations are just due to becoming more competent in the movement and the exercise and that kind of thing. So it's not overly taxing. It's like learning to drive in a Ferrari, but you can never take it to its full potential because you're just learning how to drive still.
Right.
But once you know how to drive that thing, it's like, it's intense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A couple things I want to chat about before I kind of kick you out of here.
Yeah.
Was some of the guys in the summer that we talked about Travis a little bit, but some of the guys in the summer, obviously that, you've worked with for quite a while, they keep coming back and kind of talk about reputation and stuff like that. Obviously you've got a good reputation. You've created a good culture down there. These players are coming back every summer, which is awesome. But when we look at some of these guys, like let's say I'm going to throw a couple names at you, but just so people out there understand that when we watch these guys on national television or we watch these guys play in their hometowns and play, in the NHL or pro hockey, it's not by accident. I mean, there's a lot of other things that went into this stuff, aside from just being really good at hockey and loving it and working at that as well, but like thinking of a guy like, Bo Horvat, who's now, a captain of an NHL hockey club in Vancouver. And, he's playing an unreal role for them and just, a guy who's, I think a real good team guy, obviously. Right. But I mean, what can you say about him and his off ice habits and his off season habits? And like, how serious does he take the off season?
He takes it very seriously. And two things that he had to work really, really hard to achieve was one, become more explosive. And that was recognized when he was kind of first year with the Knights, like started talking about it. And he was in here all the time working on different jump patterns. I remember I've got a video of him when he was like pretty tiny doing hurdle jumps, and it's pretty funny actually. But I remember him like trying to jump over those hurdles, and it was like, oh man, like I don't think I could get over that thing. But he pushed himself real hard, I think mentally as much as physically, to kind of get over those hurdles mentally and physically. And then now to see what he's able to do in that regard is pretty incredible. But he's worked very hard to be able to do that, and then to find a lifestyle that's going to allow him to maintain a body weight that allows him to play the role that he plays and be explosive and all that kind of thing. 'Cause that was another challenge that he had to overcome. And he has. And he's now for the last couple of years, he maintains a very consistent weight, and he knows what he needs to do to do those things. But yeah, those are two things arguably that were very critical to play the way he plays today. Not to say he wouldn't be in the NHL, but to play the way he plays today.
For sure.
I think those were really, really important pieces.
Yeah. And I mean, when you talk about body type or, his nutrition and all that kind of stuff to maintain the correct body weight, I mean, there's a lot of players, you hear it all the time that, in the off season, they gain 30, 40 pounds. And then now they're starting to trim up to get ready for the season. And that happens almost every year. Right. And Bo's, body type, my body type, your body type, they're all different. Totally. So I could, walk by a 6-pack of donuts and put on 2 pounds just by smelling it. Right. Where my buddy can walk by it and eat the whole 6-pack of donuts and nothing. It's fine. So I think knowing your body and knowing what you can put in it, knowing what helps you, what hurts you is huge. And that, to your point, I think that's one of the things Bo did a really good job of is, kind of figuring all that out along the way and then being able to manage it and being able to keep, playing at a consistent weight. And
I think it's important, again, coming back to have the right people around you to give you the right priorities, because sometimes like you might go somewhere and they might be like, oh, you just need to get stronger. But it's like, this person is already really strong. Yeah. And they could be more explosive or they could be more, whatever it is. Yeah. But I think being surrounded by the right coaches on ice, off ice, everything where they can all agree on what the priorities are for that athlete. Because you could have someone come in that's really skilled, and then all of a sudden the goal becomes putting on weight and getting stronger when the goal is maybe to stay lean or maybe at the weight they're at and become more explosive. And those two goals are very different and can make a dramatic impact on how that player would perform on the ice. Yeah. So you got to make sure you're attacking the right priorities.
For sure. Another guy I wanted to talk, I'll just bring up a couple guys, but another guy is Boone Jenner, obviously the Blue Jackets, one of the leaders there, been, playing for a while. And again, a great team guy, a guy who will sacrifice his body and everything for the team. But when we look at his off ice, he's been kind of with us and away for a little bit. Last couple of years, been in London and been skating and training with us. Had a bit of back issues, had a bit of, bit of upper body stuff, a little bit of issues, nothing crazy, but stuff that kind of kept him out of the lineup a little bit. And And then the last 2 years, especially, you've had a chance to kind of work with him a ton. What are some of the differences that you've seen in him, and what are some of the things that he's done that you're just like, he's bought into and that's kind of changed?
He's been a real exciting one to work with because he's a guy that came later, like after he was already playing in the NHL. And the first year he came, he was in the gym and he's kind of eyeing it up, like to see if this is a place he wanted to be. Because he was doing like his program issued from his team that year. And then the next year he's like, I think I want to come and I want to train with you guys. And that's when we started working. We worked individually for a little while because he did have some little issues that were kind of like you said, keeping out of the lineup, nothing crazy, but things that weren't
nagging,
just kind of nagging things.
Right? And I think just to stop you real quick, I think sometimes as players, especially as you get older and high end guys, you think that these injuries are stuff that like, I'm just gonna have to play through it. Like it's a nagging thing. So I'm going to probably have it my whole life. I'm just going to play through it. Right. And so kind of continue. Cause that is something that I think a lot of players accept and maybe have to, but maybe you don't. Right?
And like, man, like he works super hard. Like if you say go run on the treadmill as hard as you can for it until you pass out, like, okay. But anyway, and that's kind of, I think my perspective is that he would sort of train like that, just sort of not on the treadmill, but we're just working hard all the time, which is great. But I think maybe even the first couple sessions were a little bit weird because we were doing pretty simple stuff, working on different movement patterns, and within a fairly short period of time, like we didn't touch a weight his first off season actually working with us for 8 weeks, and even at that point it was like really light, like literally the bar and then like 10 pounds in the bar. Not that he couldn't do more, but like we were just rebuilding. And he's really smart athlete in terms of his body awareness. So we were able to progress actually very, very fast. And that's actually really quick.
Okay. So that's not easy to do though. It's not easy to have an athlete, an elite athlete at the NHL level come in and not really touch weights for 8 weeks. Like that's hard. That's a hard sell for that athlete.
And he never asked any questions actually, which is kind of funny.
But the other thing too, what I was going to ask you though is he must have been seeing results in how he felt and how his body was moving and even looking in the mirror in those first couple of weeks to be like, okay, this is actually working. Right?
Well, yeah. And I remember actually to the end of that first off season, we hadn't done like an overhead squat all year, but we had done a ton of patterning. And I guess one of the tests that they had done at camp was like an overhead squat. And one day he was in the warm up, he had a towel over his head. He was like just squatting up and down. And he's kind of like looking a little bit confused. And I went up to him, he's like, man, he's like, I've never been able to do this before. and it was pretty exciting to kind of see that stuff and see how everything connects. Like we didn't have to do that specific exercise for it to get better, but we worked on a lot of other things that were important to be in place in order to do that exercise. So, and I'm really thankful like that he's kind of said like throughout the year, if anything does act up, he's like, I always know exactly what I need to do. So he's developed a really good routine to kind of keep everything in check, and says that he feels night and day compared to the way it was before. And something that's really important to me too is this, that now for him to say, now I know that if I go do these 3 exercises, it kind of just keeps everything feeling the way it's supposed to. So it's not, so there's an education piece there too, which is
for sure.
I think huge. So that was a different kind of a scenario. So it was exciting to have him come later already an established NHL player and work with something like that.
No, it's cool. Another guy I want to touch on just because he's not he's a pretty big name around this area, but as far as the NHL circles, he's kind of starting to get his foot in there and starting to get kind of becoming a mainstay, but is Greg McKegg, who was a big guy around here in minor hockey. He got drafted high and played in Erie, then played in London, and, was a big guy, and then, or a big name, I should say. And then kind of took him a couple years, he was with Pittsburgh for a little bit, with Carolina for a little bit. Now he's with the New York Rangers. But he's a guy who just hasn't stopped working, and he's had games in the NHL and then gets sent down, gets games in the NHL, gets sent down. And, he's in the last couple of years, it seems like he's starting to get a little bit more of a footing in the NHL, which is great. But again, looking at him behind the scenes and kind of his work ethic and what he's done in the off season, what are a couple of things that you can kind of speak to about?
Well, it's even like you just said, like for years, he's been kind of up and down and up and down. And he really does have a very even, just like attitude, and like he's always just comes and he works hard every single time. And you can tell that like if his weight changes or if whatever, like he's right on top of taking care of that stuff, but he's also pretty like relaxed. You know, like I don't think he gets down. Like doesn't seem like gets down on anything. Like he's always just working hard and just keeps climbing. Which I've seen other players that have been, you know, kind of going up and down and stuff like that, and they just have a different mindset after a couple of years. Whereas he's been, you know, awesome to work with. And, he's always got a great attitude. And
and it kind of takes. He seems to me anyway. Like I've had a chance to know him since he's been in midget, but always. Yeah. He was never too high or never too low. You know, he's never a guy who's, you know, comes in rah, or comes in down in the dumps. He's just always kind of, hey boys, what's going on? Just a guy, good guy,
awesome
everyone loves him and works, puts the work in, and you know, but yeah, he's mentally he seems to be always in a not I don't want to say a good spot because I know he's gone, you know, getting sent down is easy and playing a bunch of games in NHL is great, and then all of a sudden the bubble bursts for a second or a while, and that's hard, right? But I think all in all, he's a guy who obviously like works
year after year, is working hard and doing what he needs to do to continue to become better as a player and as a person and everything. I think.
Yeah, no, for sure. And two more guys I want to touch on because one of them's they're kind of yin and yang here, but one of them's Olli Mata, who obviously has been with us, you know, periodically for summers and has been an awesome guy and just, you know, through the nights, and then when he's playing pro, he's come back and worked in the summers. But what can you say about him as far as just work ethic and what he's done? He's had an unreal career so far as winning a cup and Olympics and all the stuff that he's done. You know what I mean? And I know sometimes he gets knocked a little bit in the NHL that maybe his feet aren't good or he's, you know, just not playing the right role or whatever it is. But I mean, behind the scenes and what he does in the off season, I mean, what can you say about him?
He like when he was with the Knights, he'd like be the guy on the bike for an hour after a game and not like doing a flush ride. Like he'd like ride up pretty hard. Yeah. Like he would push himself so hard to the point where a lot of educating with him, not just for me, but also with Pittsburgh, I think was just, you got to learn to also take it a little bit easier and do more recovery based stuff and not just always kind of go.
Yeah.
And he's changed it a ton that way. Like he's always been such a, like he tries to learn as much as he can. Like, you know, he's one of the guys that when he was even younger, you'd ask him what he eats and he'd be like, oh, I've, you know, 30% this, 40% that. Like it's all, you know, it's all conscious. Nothing was unconscious. Like drink this much water in the morning, drink this much during my workout. Do like everything was really planned out. Not everyone's like that or needs to be like that. But yeah, he is really meticulous. Like he's a real pro in that sense that he's always looking for ways to be better and to get better. And I think that goes the same on the ice. Like he's looking to work on different anything and everything that can make him better.
He's one of the only guys in the NHL that came back and said, I don't want to touch a puck for the first like couple sessions.
That's what I mean. That kind of thing, like where he's
work
just
on my skating.
Yeah.
I feel my skating's off a little bit. But attention to detail, massive. He's one of the only guys I've ever heard of with like the hunters telling him to like slow down. Like you can't don't work out after a game. Like you got to slow down. You're playing 25 minutes and you're going to do bench press or going to do squats and stuff after practice, but like slow it down. And I think, you know, it's a kind of a good tell for his personality and the type of guy he is. And obviously, you know, just a workhorse. On the other side of it though, a guy like Robbie Shrimp who's here, and I know he's not playing anymore, but I mean, one-on-one, great guy, awesome funny, guy. Like just, you know, he's always got stories. He's a fun dude. He's great. But obviously like a guy who needs to be surrounded with other good people just to get him in the door sometimes, right? Like he's a guy
to definitely want to hang out with. It's like, he's an awesome dude. He's always like super nice guy, like always come to the gym with great attitude, but negotiate a little bit on exercises and all that kind of stuff. But no,
that's a great word though. Negotiating in the gym. All right, listen, we're supposed to do 5. How about I do 3?
Yeah.
This is not a negotiation. Okay. All right. All right. Yeah.
No, but I
because I mean, on the hockey side of it, like just skill set wise,
skill.
NHL skill all day, and just, you know, unfortunately and this happens to a lot of different players. It is what it is. He ended up, you know, inking out a pretty good career overall. Played in the NHL a bit, played over in Europe a bunch, and obviously was a heck of a player. But just had he just had a little bit more of that mentality that some of these other guys have, and I'm not saying the guys we just talked about, but just in general, just as far as just pushing a little bit more, and not only pushing, but just listening and embracing, like, and just embracing feedback, embracing
and even taking stuff, it forward. And even if you even disagree, like think about it and then disagree, that's okay too, I think.
Yeah.
But I mean, listening is a big thing
Yeah.
You don't have to agree.
And the reason I bring him up is because a lot of people around this area know him, and a lot of people have heard of him and things like that. But it's one of those things for young kids to just, to kind of, I guess, a little bit more like look around a little bit and see what other people are doing. You don't have to do exactly what they're doing, and have a spine, have a backbone. That's one thing I really like about Robbie. If he doesn't like it, he'll tell you.
100%. Yeah.
He'll want to know the answer, want to know the reason why we're doing this. And that's okay. I think that's great.
That, yeah.
But when the reason and the answer and everything kind of lines up and it makes sense, maybe do it. Right. Maybe, and this is more for young kids, but okay, that does make sense. Then let's do it. Right.
Yeah.
And let's not try to cut corners on it and stuff. Cause I think especially at young ages, you start developing those patterns at young ages and you're allowed to do it. Then it's hard to break those patterns as you get older.
Yeah.
So just making sure that you're kind of on top of that stuff.
It's an interesting dynamic. You know what? This is a lateral step, but have you ever seen that show Letterkenny?
Oh yeah.
Like there's some kids that come in and I can tell when they're like trying to act like those guys. And I'm just like, oh man, like I'll ask like, do you watch Letterkenny? Like, oh yeah. Like, don't act like that. Totally. Not in here.
Yeah.
Like, and then I think that they honestly believe that like pro hockey players or something, I don't know, that they act like some of that stuff. And it is funny, like that show. Yeah. But when you see kids coming in and imitating that stuff, that grinds me so.
I could not agree more.
And it is so frustrating because they think it's hilarious. It's not funny. And like, sure, if you're doing that outside of here, whatever, but don't come in here with your hat sideways on your head and saying whatever you're saying right now.
Whatever language you're speaking.
Yeah.
But I think, going to exactly what you're saying, I think it's like getting influenced, right? It's just like you see, I remember growing up, you have two buddies that are best buddies and one guy speaks with a bit of a slang, whatever. Well, the other guy picks it up and now he's speaking slang and it's just, you kind of just be your own person. And you can steal things from different people or learn things from different people, obviously. But I think, have a spine, have a backbone, be your own person and try to, pave your own way a little bit. Don't be such a follower all the time. And not to say you got to be a huge leader and a guy that's leading the way all the time or a girl that's leading the way with their friends and stuff, but just be someone that, no, you know what? That's not right. I'm not going to do that. Or no, this sounds stupid. I'm not going to talk.
Think for yourself, basically.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. To sum it up.
It sounds too obvious, like almost obvious, but it is crazy how many people don't do that at younger ages. And some of the kids I think that make it, whether it's hockey or whatever, but I think start thinking for themselves at maybe a younger
for sure
age.
I totally agree. Yeah, definitely. No, you're right though. And I think a lot of that, again, we always talk about this and I feel like I'm on my soapbox, but it's a lot of the parenting, right? It's a lot of how you're parenting your kids at young ages. Are you letting them speak? Like how many parents, you meet a young 12-year-old kid and you ask the 12-year-old kid, hey, what'd you have for breakfast today? And dad's like, oh, he had bacon and eggs. And like, but it happens all the time, right?
Oh yeah.
And I don't think the dad or the mom's doing it to be malicious or to be controlling. It's just, they're just reacting and they're just trying to help their son or daughter out. Well, no, like ask them a question and maybe it'll take 5 seconds for them to start talking, but just let them battle through it and figure it out.
Yeah.
Because man, those little struggles now are going to pay off later on when he can speak for himself or she can speak for herself, So, listen, buddy, I really appreciate you stopping by. I know that you got to get running. So, but thanks a lot. And we'll definitely be having you back on for sure.
Awesome.
All right, buddy.
That's good.
Take
Thanks.
care. Okay.